It's one thing if you have cancer, but how do you treat cancer? One of the best ways is to prevent it.
Never put hot food in plastic. The plastic leaches into the foods, and then when you eat the food, you're actually eating the plastics.
So we're going to talk about that topic today, and we're going to talk about a relatively new area of functional integrative medicine, and that is coaching.
I believe a huge reason for the rise in cancer is how toxic our environment is. Our home is a great place to start. So looking at the products you're bringing into the home, your cleaning products, your personal care products, start scanning your personal care products, the things you're putting on your body every day, then look for cleaner options.
Since the early 70s, 1 in 7 Americans were diagnosed with cancer. Now we're 1 in 3 in women and 1 in 2 in men because of prostate cancer. These numbers are staggering. They're going to be getting worse and worse and worse. Welcome to Rethink My Health podcast and radio show, where each week we come to you from our studios in Atlanta, Georgia, talking about chronic disease health topics that matter most to you, your family, your loved ones and friends. And as I say time and time again, they do matter most to us, the research scientists, the practitioners, the physicians in the trenches, working day in, day out, looking for answers for complex, advanced chronic diseases. Over the past several months, we've been going over a series of different topics. We've gone from cancer to heart disease to autoimmunity to thyroid to even scoliosis, finding out answers and interviewing and having conversations with experts. This show is about education. It's about empowering you to take action for your own personal temple. It's not to replace your advice for your medical doctor or your family practitioner or any other physician. It's really about education. And we want to inspire you. We're looking for research. We're looking for strategies. This is really about strategy for you to regain your health and to rethink it. Sometimes that we get into a box and we can't get out of the paralysis of analysis. And we want to break that mold. Hey, I'm Dr. Gez Agolli, your host, Integrative Practitioner, Doctor of Natural Public Health, and working with you and my team, we're always looking for answers. Rethink My Health is sponsored by Progressive Medical, one of the leaders in functional integrative medicine for over 27 plus years. Over 50,000 patients come through the clinic, and we're just excited to be part of that team. Okay, let me get into the topic today. We've dealt with this topic several different times. One of my good friends, Dr. Josh Axe, was recently talking about how to prevent cancer, what to do on a daily basis. It's one thing if you have cancer, but how do you treat cancer? One of the best ways is to prevent it. So we're going to talk about that topic today, and we're going to talk about a relatively new area of functional integrative medicine, and that is coaching. Now, coaching's been around for a while. We're talking about wellness coaching, health coaching. I'm going to be interviewing an expert that not only transformed her life, but took that knowledge and is helping clients right now regain their health. So let's just jump right into it. So cancer's been on the rise now for the past decade or so. We're seeing younger and younger individuals. Just recently, I was speaking to one of our colleagues, Dr. Bouquet and Magda Snaden, our nurse practitioner that focuses on integrative oncology, and they're seeing younger patients. I interviewed Dr. Meakin, who is a board-certified oncologist, and he has never seen this in career. 28 years old, stage 4 cancer. So how does this happen? Well, we'll kind of get into that a little bit. But I think it's really, really important to take a step back and to find out what are some of the root causes, what can you do now to take action so that if you get the diagnosis, your body is more resilient, or better all, prevent it. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That's an old saying, but there's a lot of truth to that. So Melissa Nohr is joined with me in the studio today. Melissa, first of all, thank you so much for joining us on your busy day. Tell us a little bit about how you got started into coaching. Take me back a little bit, because I want to hear your personal story and share that with the listeners because actually your first career was an attorney. So that's kind of an interesting twist. So let's talk about that. How does this all start?
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me to be on. So, I was a litigation attorney. That's how I started my career. And after practicing for about 10 years, I began experiencing health issues and got very frustrated. They were gradually coming on, but it got to a point where I was really could not just get through the day without needing a nap. I just felt terrible. And I kept going to different doctors, and one doctor would send me to another doctor, and he would send me to another doctor, and she would send me to a different doctor. And I just got so frustrated with the entire process. So I went back to school and I discovered functional medicine and absolutely fell in love with functional medicine. It was the first time I had ever heard anything about root cause or that nutrition could impact your health. And so I got very excited about it. And in that process, I actually discovered Progressive Medical Center because I was looking for functional medicine. I was looking for root cause. And I came here and I met Dr. Bouquet, who you just mentioned, and brilliant doctor. And he understood what I was going through. It was the first time I really felt like someone understood and gave a voice to what I had been experiencing. And so with Progressive and then throughout my own knowledge that I was gaining going through school, I was able to overcome my health challenges. And after that, I thought about going back to law. I spent a lot of time in law school and 10 years building my practice. So I had thought about going back to it, but I really felt that God was calling me to coaching and to working in functional medicine so that I could walk alongside people who were going through those challenges I went through and give them hope, give them guidance, and help them to get their power back. Because when you go through health challenges, you feel like you lose your power. And that's a scary place to be, and it can be a hopeless place to be. So when you empower people and you give them the knowledge, then they get that power back. They are able to overcome their health challenges because they have all of the tools that they need, the clarity that they need to move forward.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. That's fantastic. I'm so proud of you that you took action for your health because you obviously suffering with some chronic issues and you knew that the status quo was not good enough for you. So you started thinking outside the box. So let's just jump into the coaching for a second. What's really interesting that we got some great practitioners out there in the United States, whether they're traditional or functional integrated trained. And we need practitioners, of course, and they're fantastic at diagnosing and ordering tests and using medication when necessary and prescribing. But what ends up happening is that there also is kind of a disconnect sometimes with patients and practitioners because of either time issues or other responsibilities. So coaching, let's use the definition. What is the definition of health coaching? That kind of fills the gap for communication, but I want to hear your perspective because you've got certification, you've got several certifications, and I know that you're certified cancer health coach. I want to talk a bit about that, but tell us how the role works with a coach into a integrative setting and also independently, and how you can bridge that gap to help patients navigate some of the complexities of treatment protocols and testing and understanding certain things, and how you fill that void.
So there is definitely a gap there when patients or people go through health challenges. They're getting a lot of testing done. They can feel very overwhelmed. They're flooded with information. Now there's even more information out there. I'm thankful that there wasn't all of that out there when I was going through my health challenges, because that would have caused additional stress, just differing ideas and differing opinions about what people should do. So with with coaching, I help to simplify. I'd really try to reduce the overwhelm into actionable steps, because it can be paralyzing. Having all this information, you don't know where to start. And so I help people structure the recommendations they're getting. We have excellent providers here at Progressive, so they give them treatment plans, and then I walk alongside them and help them break down those treatment plans into action steps. And what can you do today? And if someone feels overwhelmed, let's pick a couple of things to start with. And then once they master those, then let's pick a couple of other things. And you're really translating the information into the day-to-day, into their daily life, so that they can take steps every day to help improve their health.
That's great, Melissa, because you're bridging the gap. And I like the word action steps, because you can sit there and end up in the paralysis of analysis. You can have the best diagnostic workup. You can have the best advice, the best nutrition plan, but not executing consistently, especially when it comes to cancer. We consider cancer an advanced chronic disease. Chronic disease is longstanding. Let's put aside acute illness for just a second. That's something that allopathic medicine really does a fantastic job in. We're not going to dispute that whatsoever. But when it comes to chronic diseases, we fall short in this country. We're ranked in the high 40s for longevity. We're spending over $2.7 trillion for healthcare, gross national product. That's like almost 19% of our budget. It's continuing getting higher. Americans are frustrated. We're paying exorbitant fees for insurance. I am not saying we need insurance. Insurance is designed to help defray catastrophic care. It does not fit in the void for advanced chronic diseases. Now, some of them, of course, you can do that, but most insurance companies were designed for advanced, urgent care situation, catastrophic. We're seeing our deductibles rise. We're seeing our premiums gone through the roof. We have to take actions as Americans. I think some of the strategies we're going to talk about is how can you navigate through this? How can you responsibly take care of you and your family? And I think what's happened in our society, Melissa, and that's why I think coaching can help fill a void, is that a lot of Americans were raised, me included, that you get sick, you go to the doctor, you get a pill, here's my $10, $20 copayment. It's changed now, of course, and we're kind of conditioned for that. And so now we're not used to taking responsibility. I've seen a shift, of course. I've seen a shift. More Americans are taking responsibility. And I've traveled the world, and I used to live in Europe. My wife is British, and we used to live in England, and they have socialized medicine, and everybody thinks that's the answer, and that's usually not the answer as well. And the reason why I'm bringing this topic up, a lot of British citizens now are thinking outside the box. They're going outside the system, and they're looking for answers. And that's what's really exciting about functional medicine. And I think coaching plays a vital role in this. So let's just jump in and talk about some of the strategies for cancer. Then we'll talk about some of the financial issues, because cost is always a consideration for patients. And I want to touch on that subject a little bit, because I do think there's a way to use strategy for that on helping individuals. Okay, so reframing cancer. Now, what do you think about some of the root causes? You've been doing this for a while. I know you got certified in cancer coaching and working alongside other professionals. In the last decade or so, with all of your knowledge and going to different seminars and talking with patients with cancer, let's talk about some of the root causes that you've seen. Give me your opinion on that.
I think one of the main root causes is inflammation. So inflammation can be driven by a number of factors, but that's definitely one of the main root causes, along with blood sugar imbalances. And that's why nutrition can be such an important piece in teaching people about the power of balancing blood sugar through nutrition. And then also different infections. So looking at people's immune systems, because different co-infections can definitely contribute to that. So most of us had viruses when we were younger, and they can stay in our system and then become reactivated during periods of stress. And speaking of stress, I think that's an underestimated cause. So most of us are living in high stress environments. The United States is very high stress. I was listening to someone talk about it. They went on vacation in Greece, and they got up at 7:30 to go find a cup of coffee, and nothing was open, because there they don't start working as early as we do here. It's very work-centric here, where we don't take enough time for self-care. So a lot of people are under chronic stress, and so that's definitely another driver that I see. So those are some of the main root causes that we see.
I agree with you with the inflammation, but I want to stop for just a second and talk about this glucose control, because recently we've been having meetings with our integrative oncology team, And we've been talking about this glucose monitor. What we're learning right now with cancer is that cancer root causes could be multifactorial, which I agree with Melissa on everything she just said. But getting to the glucose, we've been talking about this for a long time. And unfortunately, it's taking a longer time for traditional oncology to kind of look at the research. Dr. Walter Longo, PhD at USC, has done a lot of research on cancer and fasting. And a lot has to do with getting the body to become more resilient. And that kind of sounds kind of intuitive. I'm fasting and I have cancer. Wait a minute here. It doesn't make any sense. Well, a lot has to do with glucose control, of course, and something called autophagy and blocking something called mTOR pathways. What we're finding out right now in integrative oncology, and a lot of research has gone into this, is that you have to have strategies to block these circulating tumor cells, these cancer cells that need to be fed. And cancer has an intuitive mechanism of hijacking the body, hijacking glucose for energy, hijacking mitochondria for energy, hijacking fatty acids, thriving in a low oxygen environment. It's called the Otto Warburg theory. And Otto Warburg was a German physician, research scientist that won 2 Nobel Prizes. So this is somebody that is highly intelligent and also was recognized for a lot of the good work he's done. But the glucose control, when you're coaching and you're working with the practitioners, and I know this is not a criticism, a lot of oncologists are just too busy and they basically say, well, eat whatever you want. I want to make sure that you gain weight. And now we know that diet is such a pivotal component to helping you navigate, whether you're doing traditional therapy, which we're not against chemo and radiation and surgical intervention when necessary, but we know that lifestyle changes, such as your diet. I know one diet does not fit all, but what are some of the strategies for glucose control? Because, when someone says, when they think glucose, they just think sugar, okay? But there's some natural foods that are really healthy, but high glycemic. So I want to talk a little bit about that.
Yes, and that is something we focus on, the glycemic index. So some foods are high, they're higher in sugar. So even healthy foods can be higher in sugar. But first, you have to reduce your processed foods. So the ultra processed foods are all going to contribute to blood sugar imbalances. They're loaded with hidden sugars. So you have to be very careful with just reducing those, eliminating completely the ultra processed foods. But even when you're talking about the whole foods that we recommend people eat with cancer, so your fruits, your vegetables, your quality protein, there are some fruits, for example, that are higher glycemic, like pineapple. So you may want to reduce those. And the benefit of continuous glucose monitoring is everyone can see for themselves which foods may impact their blood sugar more than others, because that's individualized. It's an interesting thing to see. But for most people, if you're focusing on quality protein, healthy fats, and eating those first at the beginning of your meal, and then having the carbs later, like your quinoa later. So if you start with your fibrous foods, your vegetables, have your protein, your healthy fats, and then have your quinoa, if that's part of your nutrition plan later, that will help to steady blood sugar. But definitely also intermittent fasting. And, depending on the person, that can be intimidating to hear fasting, but making sure you're at least doing a 12-hour fast. So finishing dinner by 7 p.m. and not eating again before 7 a.m. the next morning. Just starting there. So, all of these things are doable. It's just individualized, so that if fasting's intimidating for you, then let's start at 12 hours. And then maybe you want to build up to 14, 16 hours. But so those are different strategies for blood sugar.
I think that's a great strategy. And I want to talk a little bit about glucose monitors for a second. Recently, I was speaking to one of our other administrators, and we found the source, and we're going to be implementing this. I'll be having a conversation with our team about this. I'm really a big believer as well as measurements. We really believe in measurements as well. Do you have any experience with these glucose monitors and helping individuals navigate? Because it's interesting, even if you do it for 2 weeks or 4 weeks, you really have an idea of how certain foods respond to your body. Sleep deprivation, believe it or not sleeping well could raise your glucose on certain foods or glucose on its own. Stress, so there is a cortisol glucose pathway, glucocorticoid pathway that kind of intersects. So when you're in a stressful situation, you can see your cortisol and glucose rising. So there's different strategies. I think these monitors really serve a role. I don't think you need to have it continuously unless you're a diabetic, of course. And if you're a diabetic, certainly follow the advice of your physician and and you're taking your medications and whatever other strategy. But from a cancer perspective, I think it's very, very important because there's so much information when you're diagnosed with cancer, and there's a lot of fear involved and anxiety on what to do next and who to listen to, all of this information. My advice has always been to surround yourself with positive individuals and surround yourself with caretakers that you could relinquish certain care to assist you, and advocates. And then once you make that decision, that you work together. And we always encourage individuals not to abandon allopathic oncology, but to also look outside and incorporate these lifestyle strategies. And a lot of Americans right now are looking for integrative. And I think glucose control is very, very important. Getting back to my question, have you had any experience with these glucose monitors?
I've had different clients that use the glucose monitors, and what I hear mostly from them is how they're surprised about which foods raise their blood sugar. So that's something that definitely I would recommend trying and using for a couple of weeks and seeing which foods, and then to eliminate the foods that do cause more blood sugar issues.
That's a fantastic strategy. I totally agree. Hey, if you're listening to the first time, this is Rethink My Health radio show and podcast. We're so excited bringing you information, bringing you real life solutions for complex issues. Nothing is simple, but there is hope. If you're battling cancer, there is hope. We're going to encourage you to find a certified health cancer coach. They're out there. Melissa's certified. I went through the training. I got certified as well. It's fantastic training. It gives you the support. It's not there to replace your traditional oncologist or your physician or your integrative doctor. It's there to support you to make sure that you are consistent, that you can just shift through all the noise and the challenges so that you will have a plan of action and you have a team that supports you. It's really interesting. I talk about coaching in this way. If you look at all these successful sports teams and they talk about these great athletes and these amazing athletic individuals, and they're very talented, I've not seen one professional team ever win a championship without a group of coaches leading them and directing them and challenging them and having them harness their ability. There is no difference. There isn't going to be a team out there in professional sports, or any sports for that matter, that are going to win anything without a coach. Because they're just going to ramble along and let me do this and let me do this. We don't need to practice. We need to do that. What's the difference when you're dealing with an advanced chronic disease? You need direction. You need a coach. Physicians are amazing at diagnosing and treatment. And some physicians can be coaches. I've seen that. I've worked with plenty of them. I've done that myself, and I've worked with countless individuals to help them. But now our system, not only is it broken and it's very challenging for physicians, we need a team. And that's why I love coaches. Rethink My Health is about education. Melissa, I just want to, before we go on our break, we're about to go on a break. I want to devote the next segment to prevention, and I want to talk about certain strategies as well. Any other words of wisdom when it comes to our listeners that are dealing with cancer and how to pick the right coach?
That's a great question. So first of all, I appreciate that people recognize that coaching can be beneficial. So finding someone that can walk alongside you through this journey can be very influential in your whole journey. So I encourage you to find a coach. But as far as looking for a good coach, make sure they're qualified. There's so many people calling themselves coaches now that do not have the qualifications to help you through a chronic illness. So if you are dealing with a chronic illness and you're looking for a coach, check their qualifications and make sure that if you have cancer that they are certified in cancer coaching. It's different. I've got multiple certifications, but the cancer wellness coaching, I've got 2 in cancer coaching, and those I use with my cancer patients. So I encourage you, if you are looking for a coach, to check qualifications and then interview them and make sure that it's a good fit before you get started.
It's fantastic advice. Hey, this is Rethink My Health. We're going to be taking a break in a second. We're going to be back. We're going to be talking about strategies now on cancer coaching, wellness, getting to the root cause. There is hope if you have been diagnosed with cancer. There is hope, and being resilient and using lifestyle wellness has shown great advancements in helping our cancer patients as well. This is Rethink My Health. Back in a moment. Hey, welcome back. Rethink My Health podcast. I'm Dr. Gez Agolli, your host, integrative practitioner, doctor of public health. Working on strategies, we're talking about a devastating advanced chronic disease, cancer. Well over 2.2 million Americans, according to the CDC, NIH, will be diagnosed with cancer. We're seeing younger Americans get cancer. I want to devote this segment to talking about some strategies on how can you prevent cancer. And I think there's been a lot of research with that. We're talking to an expert on coaching, and I think this is so important. Melissa Nohr is a certified wellness and health coach specializing in cancer and also other chronic diseases. One of the areas that we have our focus on is really working within a team setting and helping you put together a plan of action, working alongside your physicians and your practitioners together and looking for optimal results. Melissa, we talked a lot about some of the root causes. We know inflammation plays a role. We know glucose control plays a role. Stress reduction plays a role. Looking at infections and, of course, environment and also chemicals are a big part of that as well. And these are all wonderful. You know, we can talk about this and you can do this, you can do this. And sometimes individuals are so overwhelmed, they don't do anything, right? It's like someone that says, you know, I know how to work out, but they're not doing it, right? Because they don't have anybody guiding them, directing them. So let's dive in here, because I think that we should be living today that we're all concerned about cancer. And the reason why I say that, I'm not here to frighten anybody, but statistically, the stats don't look good. I mean, since the early 70s, 1 in 7 Americans were diagnosed with cancer. Now we're 1 in 3 in women and 1 in 2 in men because of prostate cancer. These numbers are staggering. They're going to be getting worse and worse and worse. So that's why we have to devote more time to education. And I heard Dr. Axe talking about this, and he said you need to live each day like you have cancer, right? Meaning that you have to do certain things. So let's talk about some of these strategies. And I wrote some of them down. We talked a little bit about that. There's such confusion with nutrition, but I really want to focus why it's so important to rethink your nutrition. And it's more than just using the glucose monitor. I think it's a good idea as well. You talked earlier about whole foods. What exactly does that mean? There's such confusing out there. Do I go keto? Do I go paleo? I mean, I don't want to get into what people should do because everybody's individualized, but I really want to just give some basic guidelines. Give me some basic guidelines that you want to prevent cancer. Give me some of the strategies that you've seen on different courses and listen to nutritionists. What's your thought on that?
Well, again, I think the number one thing is getting rid of the ultra processed foods. You know, anything that's made in a plant is technically processed, but there's healthier process, like an organic marinara in a glass jar that comes from Italy. That's processed, but it's much healthier than Oreos or something. Always look at the ingredients, and if there's things you can't pronounce, that's likely
so
not
take
something.
Everybody's Oreos away. Okay, that's good. That's a good
not
start.
Something you want to put in your body. Well, if you're wanting to prevent chronic illness, that is definitely something you want to minimize. But so definitely getting rid of the ultra processed foods. So when I talk about whole foods, I like to say things grown on a plant, not made in a plant. So we're talking about vegetables, and eat a variety, a rainbow of colors of vegetables. And then healthy fruit. Fruit's obviously very healthy. We like the lower glycemic berries. I call blueberries brain berries. They're full of antioxidants, so many nutrients. So every day I have blueberries. But different berries are great to incorporate. And then clean protein. So you really have to be careful with protein. And I used to do shopping tours at Whole Foods. And, when you go into Whole Foods, you think everything there is going to be healthy, but it's not. So I would do these shopping tours and take people through the store to show them the differences. And one of my favorite examples would be salmon. Is in the seafood, the counter with the seafood, you can clearly see the difference in the farm salmon, which looks sick. It's high. It's got a lot of white in it, marbling, and the wild caught salmon is this dark orange, and you can tell the difference from a nutrient standpoint. So I would point that out because farm salmon is one of the most toxic foods there is. So when we're looking at protein, you've got to look at the sourcing. You want to find pastured chicken. You want to find grass-fed beef. I'm sure people have heard of that. But so make sure that the quality of your food is there. And then with the fats, that's another thing to look at. So there's a lot of toxic fats. There's a lot of attention being paid to oils now. So I usually tell people just to stick with extra virgin olive oil and avocados. Those are two amazingly healthy fats. We need fats in our diet. They are a macronutrient. So, when you're looking at, if you focus on vegetables, clean protein, and healthy fats, that can be the base of your meals. And then you can add in some complex carbs. I love sweet potatoes. I love the Japanese, the purple sweet potatoes that are in sprouts now. They're delicious, and my kids love those. So, incorporating different vegetables, try new things, make it fun, make it something you want to continue doing, to make it sustainable.
I think that's great advice and a variety. And I want to get into something that I think is very, very important, because cost obviously is a concern, and you have to have a budget, and you have to discuss this. And really another area is to look at the variety of certain foods. I heard somebody talk about something called the rainbow diet. So variety is also very important. Eating the same thing every day is not a good idea. Believe it or not, your immune system may actually develop antibodies and sensitivity to that. And I think it's also important because inflammation is one of the key areas that advance cancer. So if you're having certain foods that cause inflammation, I think it's important, if you can incorporate it in your plan, to look at a food allergy sensitivity. But getting into the cost for a second, organic when possible, but if you can't, really research something called the Dirty Dozen. And the Dirty Dozen talks about absolutely certain fruits and vegetables you should not have conventionally, because they're just loaded with pesticides and chemicals. Now, there are some certain fruits and vegetables that, mostly fruit, that you can have that are protected from the seal. I think pineapple is one of them, and also banana. But me personally, when it comes to banana, there's so many benefits with the fiber and the potassium, but unfortunately, it's very high glycemic. So there's some certain strategies with that as well, with bananas. But once again, it really depends. And if you really want to do this right, you talk to a coach like Melissa, you get a plan of action. But if you can't, do the research and put together a budget. And I like to use this terminology. A lot of people ask, well, how much should I spend for the budget? And, let's go back to the Bible. The Bible talks about tithing 10%. I really believe that you should devote 10% of your income to your health. That basically means that you're using that for healthy foods, hiring healthcare professionals, testing, certain supplements that you work together with your team to get. So if you can use that kind of as a gauge, and obviously everybody's a little different, of course. Some people say, I can't believe that I'm going to devote that. Well, if you really look at your budget, how much are you spending on entertainment? How much are you going on vacation? And one of the most powerful statements I heard was from a patient. I can't tell you her last name, but she told me I can say her first name, Stacy. And she basically said she was so sick before she came to Progressive, this is like 3 or 4 years ago, that she told her family that I need to devote resources to getting well. And we're not going to go, they used to go on 2 or 3 vacations a year. They only went on 1 vacation a year. She used those resources. She regained her health. She's thriving now. I think she's got her own podcast as well, which is fantastic. And she really thought outside the box. So 10% for prevention. But when you're sick, when you've got an advanced disease, whether it's cancer, whether it's autoimmune diseases, whether it's heart disease, whatever that disease is, cancer, I think, takes a little more resources because you got to really hit it hard when you're diagnosed. I tell individuals 30%. I know it sounds like a lot, but 30% of your income should be devoted to regain your health. Because when you're sick, to me, nothing else matters, right? Yes. I don't care what your job, I'm very sensitive to that because I know there's individuals out there, you're either a single mom, which I have a lot of compassion for, or you're the breadwinner of the family. And once again, I have a lot of compassion for that. But I really think you need to have a strategy. And if you listen to individuals like Dave Ramsey and they talk about having an emergency fund, you almost have to do the same thing for healthcare, right? You have to plan. If you don't plan, you plan to fail. And that's why we're giving you strategies. We're encouraging you to plan your health. So many Americans right now, younger and younger, are getting sick. And last week I interviewed Dr. Tony on scoliosis. He has seen a tremendous rise in children with a curvature past, in order to get diagnosed, I believe it's past 10% curvature. And a lot has to do with children's posture, not playing outside, spending time on their devices at a very early age. It's bad enough that adults are doing that, but children that are not developed. So now we're seeing more of these diseases. I think it's going to take more of a concerted effort to turn this around. And that's what we have to do. We have to think outside the box. Okay, so that's the first strategy, whole foods. Let's talk a little bit about, we mentioned about metabolic health. Okay. So the second strategy on prevention is metabolic health. We're seeing more and more Americans diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes. I call this now diabesity. There's certain states out there that now we have 40% of the population that are morbidly obese. And that's according to BMI standards, which, you can take some of those BMI standards with a grain of salt. We like to use something called the InBody and Staiku that really does real measurements, and we're measuring visceral fat. But let's talk about the metabolic health. So what are some of the strategies that someone can do to prevent cancer? Because that's a big deal. We're seeing more and more cancer patients that actually had type 2 diabetes contribute to that.
Yes, and there's definitely a rise in type 2 diabetes in children, and that's very sad. So that is a huge problem in America.
Let me just pause you for a second. For those of you that don't remember, that type 2 diabetes used to be called adult onset diabetes. They stopped calling that because now we're having teenagers and children, not type 1. Type 1's totally different, okay? There's a genetic component to that. We can talk about that. That's like less than 10%. 90% of diabetes is type 2, which is out of control blood sugar.
Yes. So the main things you can do are exercise and nutrition. And obviously getting enough sleep, stress, like Dr. Agolli was mentioning, stress, high cortisol does impact blood sugar. But when you're looking at the main 2 strategies, I would say are making sure you're getting movement every day. Dr. Agolli said a lot of people don't go to the gym. They know they should work out. They don't go to the gym. Just getting there, walking in the door. You'll never regret going. You'll never regret. Just tell yourself, I'll do 10 minutes. I guarantee you'll probably do more than 10 because you'll feel so good after doing 10. But just get there. Get yourself there. And then the whole food diet we're talking about, the reducing the blood sugar swings from the high glycemic foods, that's going to help to steady blood sugar. So just focus on those 2 things to start, and then start working on your sleep and your stress, and all of those things together can really make a huge impact in your blood sugar. And you're going to feel better. A lot of people talk about their 3 p.m. slump. Well, that's frequently caused because they're eating a high carb lunch, so their blood sugar spikes. And then around 2 or 3, you have this drop in blood sugar and you're exhausted and you can't think and you're at work and you just want to go home and take a nap. Well, that's often a sign of imbalances in blood sugar. So if you start eating a lunch like I was describing with some vegetables and protein and healthy fats, then that's not going to give you that rise in glucose with the drop after. So, just simple strategies can help to start balancing it.
That's a great strategy. And your movement is medicine to your body. And listen, we're big believers in gyms. I love personal trainers. I think it's fantastic that you can put in your budget. That's great. It could be just as simple as getting a Fitbit or some type of walker, counting your steps on your phone, and really hitting targets between 5 to 10,000 steps a day, and just moving and moving. And one of the best strategies that I've seen from a research perspective is that every time you eat, walk 10 minutes. Okay, just literally walk and get used to that habit, and you'd be surprised. If you have a sedentary position, you're working in a computer all day. There's been research on standing up, getting some of these stand-up desks, but really making a conscious effort to move and walk, and it can be something as simple as that, outdoor activity. Now, you can take it to the next level. I also think some individuals overtrain, and that has the opposite effect, because it can affect your cortisol, and the body needs to recover. And if you look at individuals, how you work out and recover, which is critically important, but I'd rather have you overtrain than undertrain, okay? Because you can always work on the overtraining, because it eventually catches up to you as well. But balance is really the key. So your movement is medicine to your body. All right, so totally agree with that. So I want to focus a little bit now, and getting back to why we're having this conversation, because originally this conversation was about coaching in a cancer situation. But I think coaches play a pivotal role on helping you prevent cancer, and living each day like you're going to get cancer probably is one of the best strategies to prevent it. But I want to tackle now toxicity. There's been some confusion with toxicity, and it's so unfortunate that we live in such a toxic world. Chemicals are bombarding us. Just go on the EPA.gov website, and the reports are just shocking on the billions and billions and billions of pounds of chemicals that are in our water, in our soil, in our air. I interviewed Dr. Burdett, who's an expert educator, and she brought out all these studies about these microplastics. Like on a weekly basis, we're breathing. Every American is breathing like a credit card. It's just shocking, these microplastics. So okay, we can't sit there and change the environment, because that takes a lot of time. And I'm a big believer that there's certain things you can do. But Melissa, you've been doing a lot of research. I know one of your roles at Progressive, helping our cancer patients when they leave our facility. A lot of patients come in for a week, 2, 3, 4 weeks. Some are here for 6 to 12 weeks, and they get home. Okay, let's talk about the environment. We know it's a problem. Give us the top strategies. Okay, I want to go for the platinum plan right now. What should somebody do in their home to make it pristine?
That's a great question. I'm glad you are focusing on toxins, because that is one of the main drivers of inflammation, and definitely I believe a huge reason for the rise in cancer is how toxic our environment is. And our home is a great place to start. So looking at the products you're bringing into the home, your cleaning products, your personal care products, the environmental working group that Dr. Agolli was mentioning that puts out the Clean 15 Dirty Dozen list. They also have an app called Healthy Living. So start scanning your personal care products, the things you're putting on your body every day. I know women put a lot of products on our bodies every day. So start scanning those, and it will give you the levels of toxins in those products, and look for cleaner options. And then your air. So yes, there's plastics in the air. There's not much we can do about the outside plastics in the air, but our internal air, we can have air filters in our homes. We can, the mold's a big issue in a lot of homes, so making sure you're not breathing in mold. Our water is a big issue, filtering water, make sure you're drinking clean water. But I really, really want to talk about the plastic, because there are things in our homes we can do. For years, our family was even microwaving plastic. That's one of the worst things you can possibly do. Never put hot food in plastic. the plastic leaches into the foods, and then when you eat the food, you're actually eating the plastic. So be sure not to do that. Plastic water bottles are a big issue. I live in Georgia, so those water bottles traveled here on a truck. There's no telling how hot that water got inside those plastic water bottles on that truck. So even if it's cold on the shelf in the grocery store, it could have been hot before. So really just try to avoid plastic water bottles at all. So minimizing plastic exposure is huge. So air, water, your personal care products, those are the main things that I like to encourage people to start doing. I had one client, I told them about the app, and they looked at under their bathroom sink, in their cabinet, and threw out almost everything under there because they were shocked. And even some things that you think are healthy that say 0, you scan it and they do have toxic ingredients. So you've really just got to be proactive. The great thing about this time is that we have tools. There's so many tools, there's apps, there's so many things that we can use so that we have the knowledge and we can avoid the toxins, because that is such a huge contributor. And we definitely don't want people living in fear. We want you to feel empowered. But the rise in cancer is scary, so we have to take these steps.
Well, sometimes you have to use fear to galvanize to take action. It's not to scare individuals, because otherwise you're going to say, oh, what's the big deal? It's not a big deal, a little bit there. No, chemicals are a big deal. And here's a rule of thumb. If you're looking at the ingredients and you can't pronounce it because of the long chemical, don't use it. How's that? That's very simple. Okay. So the great advice, I totally agree with that. Some wonderful apps. But I want to go back to my question. I think you answered all of it, except for I want to go really, really deep for those individuals that really want to take responsibility. Let's talk about some of the strategies that they could use in their home to prevent cancer. And I'm talking more like
sauna,
detox sauna.
Yeah, I love
water
personal
filter,
saunas. Yeah,
air filters. Some of those recommendations, and why should you do that?
Yeah, so I mentioned the air filtration in the home because there are different particles. There's mold. There's different things in our homes that those air filters can improve. And if you just get one for the bedroom, when you're sleeping, have one running there. Water filters to make, because the water supply is pretty polluted. You can actually look at the tap water database on the Environmental Working Group site and see what's in your water, but making sure you're filtering out any pollutants in your water. And then I love strategies like sauna. So sauna is one of the absolute best strategies for getting rid of toxins in the body. There's a lot of saunas out there now where you can actually sit in them at home. There's some where your head's out. You can work while you're sitting in there detoxing. There's wood ones that you can put in different areas. So depending on what you're looking for, just look for low EMF, look for low VOC. So you don't want to sit in a sauna that's off-gassing. So those are some things. And then when you're bringing things into the home, like new carpet, new paint, you can actually look for low VOC carpets, paints, anything like that. Everything has chemicals now.
That's a great strategy. I totally agree, low VOC. And I think it's a great strategy. Infrared saunas are fantastic. The human body is a sponge, and the body holds on to all of these chemicals and toxins, and you've got to detoxify. That's just one of the best strategies. Hey, Melissa, we only got a couple minutes, and I think this is fantastic advice, and we can talk more about it. But really, the take-home message here is to take action, rethinking your health, rethinking your strategy, preventing cancer. If you have cancer, I encourage you to find an integrative functional doctor to do a deep dive in testing, think outside the box, find out what's causing it, look at root causes, utilize all these strategies, and you can continue to the healing process. I'm going to let you have the last word on some of your encouragement as a coach. If you can give some words of encouragement, what would you tell our listeners right now?
There is hope. And one of the best things about being a cancer coach is getting to walk alongside some of the strongest people. They're going through one of the most challenging things in their lives, and to see their resilience is just amazing. Their faith, it inspires me. So there is definitely hope. And then I would just want to tell you, you are the CEO of your health. You get to make the decisions. And when you're looking at costs, think of it like an investment. There is no greater investment you can make in this entire world than in your health. So be sure to give yourself invest in yourself, invest in your health, empower yourself. I'm here to support you if you need support. And Progressive is here to give you the answers and help support you in your healing journey. So those are the main things I want to share. And thank you for letting me be on today. I hope you got a lot of information that it will empower you. And we'd love to come on again and share more.
Thank you, Melissa. I really appreciate it. Great job, Melissa. Melissa's a great team member, and she's a fantastic coach, and she's very passionate. And she's really a model because she's living everything we're talking about. And I think it's really important that when you do pick a coach or a integrated practitioner, is see if they practice what they preach. And that's one of the most important things. So I want to just inspire all of you out there. Thank you so much for listening and supporting Rethink My Health. If it's your first time listener, continue to watch a series, go back and watch some of these videos and podcasts. And our message right now is just to take action. There's so many positive things that you can do. When you change your diet, you change your life. And when you detoxify at the cellular level, amazing things happen. God designed our body, our temple. It's your temple. You are the CEO of that temple, as she said. Take action. And remember, a cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries the bone. Proverbs 7:22. God bless you guys. Be cheerful. And we'll see you next time here on Rethink My Health.